Next is Robert Early, who is a Democrat and was elected to fill the unexpired term of Leroy Whedon in District 33. He will serve as a member of the Agriculture and Livestock Committee and Regions, Compacts, and Districts. Robert, welcome to the House. Next is Orlando.
Present.
House come to order. Members, please register. Quorum is present. The House and Senate are meeting in joint session today pursuant to Senate Concurrent Resolution 1, providing an address by His Excellency Mark White, Governor of the State of Texas. At this time, for the purpose of introduction, I would like to introduce to you the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, the Honorable William Hobby. Governor Hobby. Members, I've just been informed that the House is operating on the same procedures as the Super Bowl game, that we have to wait for the TV clearance. And so we have 2 minutes to go. So let's stall for 2 minutes here.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Mark White, Governor of Texas.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My fellow Texans, I address you at a decisive moment in the history of this state. Today we are at a crossroads. Make no mistake about it. What we do or fail to do in this special session will affect the future of an entire generation of Texans. We may not all agree on every detail of the plan for education reform, and we may not all agree on the entire revenue package, but we just must agree on the basic objectives that bring us together, our quest for the finest educational system this country has ever seen and the best transportation system anywhere in America. These are the two things that we must reach for. These are the two things that a growing and vibrant state must have to assure its future. We know that the forward march of civilization has at almost every significant turn been marked by some major improvement that made either mobility or knowledge more accessible. Advancements in education and transportation have always opened new opportunities for our people. The wealth of knowledge spread across an ever-widening spectrum of society has always fertilized the seeds of greater prosperity. And investments that have given us greater mobility have always repaid us with rich economic and social rewards. There's nothing mysterious about the role of education in our society. The entire history of the United States has been an ongoing process of making more and more education available to more and more people. The spread of free universal public education in the early 1800s, the Land-Grant Act of the 1860s, the GI Bill of the 40s, the National Defense Education Act of the 50s, the Elementary, Secondary, and Higher Education Act of the 1960s. Each of these opened the doors to our schools and universities, and it was dramatic. We never know who's going to pass through those doors when we open them. we never know whose lives are going to be transformed or whose careers are going to transform our society. Who could have gone to that Houston school in the 1950s and told us that one of those black girls would grow up to become one of the most brilliant politicians of our age and one of the most admired women of our time? Who could have sat in that remote Upshur County school and predicted that one of those young boys would today be helping to shape our technological and economic future? Who could have ever guessed that that skinny young Mexican American in the San Antonio parochial school would develop into the charismatic leader who today sits as mayor of the nation's 10th largest city? Who could have foreseen that the young boy in that Texarkana school would one day be a great leader in American business? Are those same doors of opportunity still open to bright young Texans? Could another Barbara Jordan come out of a crowded, noisy, undisciplined Houston classroom today? Are we graduating the kind of teachers who can build a fire of intellectual excitement in another Bobby Inman? Are we producing the kind of teachers who care enough to inspire another Henry Cisneros? Are we delivering the kind of quality education that will produce another Ross Perot? I submit to you that the answer is by no means certain. And yet, isn't it obvious, as history tells us time and again, that our greatest economic resource is our people? Isn't it obvious that a healthy and strong educational foundation is the only true basis for progress, for higher human achievement, and for greater economic growth? Texas' greatest leaders, from President Mirabel Lamar of the Republic of Texas to President Lyndon Johnson, recognized this. Education was at the core of Lamar's vision of a greater Texas, and education was at the center of Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society. In the early days of the Texas, lands were set aside for the public schools. At that time, it might have been considered a costly investment, but because of that investment, those lands continue to finance our public schools today. Likewise, the tremendous foresight that made possible the creation of Texas Permanent University Fund has paid off over and over again. That fund has enabled our flagship universities to become institutions of the first class, among the very best in the world. The shape of this state's future was dramatically affected this year by the decision of the Microelectronic and Computer Technology Corporation to locate its headquarters in Texas. Once again, we found that the critical factor above all others was that Texas was going to be the winner over California and other states because of a commitment to a first-class education system. This consortium of high technology firms has become a tremendous magnet for new industries and firms that are following MCC into our state. But the real magnet was the level of excellence and quality found in our universities. By the same token, the economic payoffs of America's vast transportation system have been no less dramatic. We only need to look back as far as the opening of the post roads in this country to find one such example. That accomplishment, though initially sought as a means of opening overland mail routes to our distant frontiers, ushered in a whole new era of overland trade and commerce. At vast human and monetary expense, we pushed the railroads to the Pacific and built bridges and dug canals. The price was high, but the advantages drawn from a finished industrial system would aid in the consummation of many a dream. The Works Progress Administration and the Public Works Administration of the 1930s, the National System of Interstate and Defense Highways of the 1950s, that would become the largest public works project in the history of the world. In each case, the builders and dreamers of better transportation systems have opened new opportunities for virtually every sector of American society. Public resources and private sector ingenuity have worked together to supply our transportation needs. They've worked in Texas to supply us with a vital network of roads and highways. Yet today, that network is straining under the pressures of growth, congestion, and decay. We find that a mainstay of our prosperity is now in jeopardy. The critical need for new investment in the maintenance and development of our highway system should be lost on no one. How will we continue to build our communities, generate new industries, provide jobs, and link our farms and factories, our homes and places of work, and bring people together without investing in this primary system of transportation? I believe that Texans are willing to pay for the best highway system in the nation. but to the extent possible, the people who use the highways should be the ones to pay for them. And I share the goal expressed by the legislative leadership that we should remove highways as an unpredictable drain on general revenues. To accomplish this goal, the user fees should be oriented to growth and dedicated to transportation. I am proposing more than $300 million new dollars a year to be invested in highways. This money would come from a 5-cent increase in motor fuel taxes, and I view it as a major step forward. If the legislature believes that user fees are required, I would ask that they be phased in so we do not damage the economic activity which we're seeking to promote. We stand today at a time in Texas when Texas is capable of becoming a leader in world trade and commerce. If only we will ensure that the necessary systems of economic development are well in place. We stand today at that crossroads. And if we fail now to make the right decision, enormous potential will be lost and our economic prospects will be decreased. We stand also at a crossroads in the development of human potential, our greatest renewable resource. Every hope for the livelihood and vitality of future generations of Texans now rests squarely on this generation's decision to move forward with a plan to improve public education. It rests squarely on the shoulders of every member of this distinguished body to decide whether Texas will rejuvenate and reform education or let the status quo continue to seal the fate of our children and grandchildren. Current conditions make unavoidable the conclusion that we must find better ways of educating our children. The failures of the current system have been spelled out over and over again. The evidence surrounds us, not just in numerous reports and studies, but in the more obvious signs of wasted human potential. A single tour through our state's prisons and the most cursory understanding of why many of our young people are incarcerated there points to one graphic example of where a poor education can lead. The frustration and embarrassment suffered by those who cannot read and write well enough even to fill out a simple job application is another. Crime and unemployment are among the greatest tragedies that result. The failures of education are also taking their toll in the area of national security by endangering the quality of this country's armed forces. A recent federal survey found that 45% of the Army's recruits could not read or do math as well as the average ninth grader. The fact that so many recruits cannot even begin their military training until they receive extensive remedial education to overcome functional illiteracy has costly and ominous implications. Equally disturbing are the less dramatic but more common limitations faced by the young men and women who enter the job market unable to perform the simplest mathematical problem. The young men and women entering college who cannot write a simple declarative sentence. For all intents and purposes, basically intelligent people are locked in prisons of their own educational limitations, and their futures are predetermined. We all recognize that we face a crisis in American education. In the past year, we've seen other states coming to terms with that crisis. The opportunity is now at hand to halt the decline of education in Texas and turn back the tide of mediocrity in our own public schools. The months of work by the Select Committee on Public Education, the Perot Committee, the dedication and commitment of leaders throughout this state, and the resolve of the leadership of this House and Senate to reform education in Texas all have given us a moment of opportunity in which we can take action. Public support is providing us with the momentum we need to bring about real and lasting change. And I applaud both the legislature and the State Board of Education for reforms already enacted in 4 major areas. The legislature has revised the basic outline for instruction. Reform was extended to the area of teacher education. A study of vocational training was undertaken, and the State Board has been working to protect the instructional day for academic purposes. Before there ever was a report entitled A Nation at Risk, Texas was acting to reduce its own risk. Members of the State Board of Education and the 67th Legislature deserve our appreciation for taking these first steps in the reform movement. But even as we applaud these initiatives, we recognize them as only a beginning. Texas has always had a proud tradition of leadership in the United States. Steadily, our state has moved toward leadership in the world community. That leadership, however, is being challenged daily by the forces of competition, and we face a decisive and critical choice by which we will be measured not only by the rest of America, but by others in the world community at large. Yet the most crucial measurement will be history itself, whether our children are prepared to lead this state into the future. And unless we come to terms with the conditions we now find in our own educational system and rebuild and rejuvenate our system with quality and excellence as our goals, Texas may lose the foundation of all her past progress. We just must not leave Texas standing by while others get ahead. Our state and its people cannot afford it, and I have deep faith, and I am firm in my conviction that there is not a person in our presence today that would let that happen. In recent weeks, I have submitted my specific package of reform proposals that has been the basis for agreement among the leadership. The ingredients of an effective educational reform package are well known to all of us. We must make certain that every child learns to read and write before leaving the first grade, and that no child leaves the schools of Texas without proficiency in English. Whether headed for college or into the workplace, no young person today is equipped for life without a grasp of math and science. And we must teach the basics of math and science and teach them well. No teacher can do the job, and no student can learn in an overcrowded classroom that breeds neglect of our children's needs. So we must reduce class size. Job markets are changing, and so are the job skills that workers need. Therefore, we must have cost-efficient and quality-controlled vocational training for a changing economy. We must put work ahead of play, and we must recapture the school day for academic endeavors. Learning cannot be achieved with disorder and misconduct in the classroom. There is no excuse for any school district to be without a code of conduct, and we must not tolerate disruption in our schools. We must have equalization of funding to guarantee equal quality, equal educational opportunity for every boy and girl in every school district in the state of Texas. You and I will not have succeeded in meeting our responsibility until each of us would be proud to send our children to any school in this state, for that is what the truest test will be. If our children are to grow up and become the best and the brightest, they must be taught by the best and the brightest. And we must provide scholarships to attract the most talented people into teaching. We must have a clear measurement of student progress, and the best way to achieve that is to end social promotion and begin annual monitoring of student achievement. The state of Texas spends $8 billion every biennium on education. And yet it is difficult to find anyone accountable for how we spend those precious dollars. We must have a directly accountable management system. The possibilities in education are restricted if the road to becoming a teacher is too narrow. Therefore, we must have alternative routes to teacher certification. We must have some method of assessing current teaching and administrative staff to ensure that all professionals in our schools possess the skills necessary to provide quality education. And although I waited till last, the first thing every report has said is that we must give teachers better pay. We must realize that Texans won't get the teachers they deserve until teachers are rewarded and respected. We can no longer expect women to subsidize our system of education when better paying careers are now open to them. Many people cry out that government should be run like a business. Well, no good business manager in the private sector would expect to retain the best talent and expertise by offering less than a competitive wage. Teachers are the very heart and soul of the education system. And because we value our children's future, we must pay teachers more. At the same time, we must admit that low teacher pay isn't the only problem with our schools. What is going on in our schools is clear indication that many priorities are misaligned. And because our mission must involve the quest for excellence and quality in those who teach, it is incumbent that we devise a system which clearly documents the abilities of those who educate our youth. No other issue is more emotionally charged. No other issue more clearly deserves our most judicious attention. I am convinced that a system can be established which meets the need for assessment of a teacher's skills and at the same time recognizes the importance of equity and performance. I'm also sensitive to the concerns of those who feel that we cannot afford to spend more for education in view of the state's fiscal condition. You can be assured of my strong commitment to avoid additional taxes in the next session. My finance plan, go ahead. My finance plan, which I have submitted for your consideration, reflects my commitment to that goal. Just as important, my plan was drawn with fairness to all taxpayers. I cannot and I will not ask you or the citizens of this state to support a plan to finance public education reform and highway improvements without pledging that these and all other government programs be operated more efficiently and effectively. I am committed to making state agencies more accountable, and I am committed to controlling the cost of state government. During the past 6 months, I have met with board members and top managers of our largest agencies to discuss cost savings and cost containment measures. In addition, I've written to the head of each state board and commission stressing the need for tight budget planning in 1986-87 biennium. I will not support additional funding for agencies that are poorly managed, wasteful, or unable to plan effectively, and I have told each one of them just that. Each agency will be required to justify any increase in the number of employees as well as budgets for travel, equipment and supplies, telephones and utilities, and all other areas of spending. The burden of proof will be on the agency, and the automatic increases will not be permitted. I am confident that we can live within the revenues made available by our current tax structure and the finance plan that I've recommended. And I am confident that with your help, we will not need to raise additional taxes in the next regular session. I have prepared a detailed set of spending projections for the 86-87 biennium that will allow state government to meet essential needs, even under the most pessimistic and conservative estimate that we will have only a 9% growth in our revenue. My proposal, which I will discuss with you in greater detail later this week, calls for a tight budget, allowing only moderate increases for inflation and growth. It would require state agencies to hold the line on operating expenses that can be reined in through innovative and careful management. If my budget plan, including my education and highway improvement proposal, is adopted, it would represent a 12.2% biennial increase, the smallest percentage increase in state spending since 1970. And if this plan is adopted, it would permit you to return to your districts at the end of this next regular session of the legislature and tell your constituents that you helped enact the most fiscally conservative budget of the past 15 years. If revenue growth exceeds 9%, and I believe that it will based on our stable economic recovery that's currently underway in Texas, additional funds would be available to meet the additional needs of a growing population. But in our immediate concerns for fiscal responsibility, let us not be short-sighted. Let us always keep in mind that the improvements in education will do more to ensure the prosperity of this state and nation than any other step we might take. And those who are inflexible in their view that we can solve all the problems in education without greater investment are blind to the reality of where we stand. For too long, we have called upon our educational system to do too many things. For too long, we have asked too much and have given too little. We are in the midst of a great period of transition in Texas with profound implications for the nature of our work and the way we live. Today, we are at the crossroads. Oil and gas, the economic foundation of the past, is gradually receding with the depletion of those resources. The age of information, of high tech and megatrends and future shock has arrived with lightning speed. We have nothing to fear about the future, and we cannot afford to look back fondly to the past. Our future lies in our ability to prepare and plan for a smooth transition that will bring forward our best while leaving none of our citizens behind. Time and again, education and transportation have been the magnets that attract and sustain a dynamic economy. We must ensure that those two vital elements will continue to be strong magnets as we look forward to the future. I submit to the members of this legislature and the people of this state that the direction we must choose for Texas at this moment is the one that is truest to our heritage, a heritage of courageous and spirited action with our eyes firmly fixed on the future. The problems of education and transportation will not go away, even if we pretend they're not there. We cannot run from them. We cannot escape them. The immortal words of Franklin Roosevelt remind us that we here in this chamber today have a rendezvous with destiny. Thank you.
Chair would like to recognize some state officials who are with us on the podium today. First, I would like to recognize the Honorable Jack Pope, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The Honorable John Onion, Presiding Judge of the Court of Criminal Appeals. And the Honorable John Fainer, Secretary of State.